Hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here.
We are.
Today, we need to talk about a mood, a vibe, really. But it's this specific psychological weight that I think you and, frankly, everyone we know has been carrying around.
Oh, yeah. It's that feeling when you look at the news
Or
or...
even just your grocery bill.
Exactly. And you think, is the ground beneath my feet actually solid?
Yes, it's this low-level hum of anxiety. Now, the source material we're covering today has a technical term for it,
Right. They call it pervasive uncertainty.
which is, a very polite academic way of saying total chaos.
It is.
But here's the hook, and it's why I wanted to cover this specific text today.
Mhm.
We often see this uncertainty as the enemy.
We do. We think, I can't do my best work until things calm down.
Right. I can't lead this team until the market stabilizes. We're just constantly waiting for the new normal to finally get here so we can start actually living.
We're treating the chaos like a waiting room.
Exactly. But our source today argues we have it completely backward. They say the chaos isn't a barrier to doing your best work.
They say that chaos is the prerequisite for it.
It's a bold claim.
It is. Especially when you feel like you're just trying to keep your head above water.
It is. So for this deep dive, we're looking at the introduction to the newest edition of the Leadership Challenge.
By James M. Kouzes and Barry Z. Posner.
And before anyone rolls their eyes and thinks, okay, great, another corporate leadership manual for CEOs.
We should probably clarify the scope here.
Yeah?
This isn't just a collection of hot takes or some management fad. I mean, Kouzes and Posner are arguably the gold standard in this field.
And we're talking, 40 years of research here.
Over 4 decades. I mean, they haven't just written a book. They've built a massive database on human behavior. They've been asking the same core questions since the early 80s.
About what people do when they are operating at their absolute peak.
Exactly. So when they say something, it's usually backed by a spreadsheet with, a few million rows.
So the mission for this deep dive is to look at their latest findings in the context of our current messy world.
Right, and to really understand this counterintuitive link between crisis and greatness.
And maybe most importantly, figure out if there's an actual roadmap for navigating this pervasive uncertainty without completely burning out.
Because, let's be honest, the uncertainty isn't going away.
No, it's not. And I really appreciate that the authors spend a good chunk of this introduction just validating that feeling.
They don't gaslight you by saying everything is fine.
Not at all. They lay out what they call the context of chaos.
And it is a heavy list. They catalog the specific disruptions that made this new edition necessary, and they start with the elephant in the room.
COVID-19.
Of course.
Which, looking back, it's so easy to forget just how total that disruption was. The text points out it wasn't just a medical crisis.
No, it broke the fundamental ways we lived. How we shopped, how we learned.
How we worshipped. Everything.
And the psychological toll of that. The authors highlight the decline in belonging. That's a key phrase for me.
Explain that.
Well, when you disrupt the rituals of gathering, whether that's a morning meeting at work or a family holiday, you strip away the social glue.
People just became isolated.
And fearful. They paint this picture we all remember, standing in those socially distanced lines, hoping the store has toilet paper.
Watching ships backed up in ports. It was this sudden realization that the systems we trusted, the supply chains, the institutions,
That they were fragile, that the
Yeah.
world is maybe held together with duct tape.
and that fragility wasn't just logistical, it was societal.
Yeah.
The source material draws a direct line from the pandemic to a massive spike in social and political unrest.
Right, and this is where the book kind of surprised me. Usually business books will shy away from specific political events.
But they don't. They list some major flashpoints. They talk about the murder of George Floyd.
They do, and they frame it specifically around the reaction. They note that it became a global rallying cry.
It wasn't just a U.S. event.
No, it sparked protests worldwide, forcing a conversation about these deep-seated injustices that had been ignored for too long. It was a moment where the status quo was just violently disrupted.
And then, on the political front, they cite the January 6th storming of the U.S. Capitol.
And regardless of where you stand on that, the authors point to it as a disruption of a norm we all took for granted.
The peaceful transition of power.
Exactly. They connect these events, the
Yeah.
protests, the riots, the polarization, to show a trend line. Trust in institutional leaders hit an all-time low.
And civil discourse just collapsed.
While misinformation went viral, it feels like they're describing a perfect storm.
A perfect storm. You have the biological crisis, the social crisis, And the political crisis all at once.
And don't forget the economic and environmental layer on top of that.
Right. The Great Resignation.
Or, as the authors prefer to call it, the Great Reshuffle or Great Exploration.
I like that distinction. Resignation sounds so passive, like giving up.
Whereas exploration sounds like you're actively looking for something better. Millions of people just stopped and asked, is this it? Is this worth it? The text links this directly to the burnout from the pandemic.
And then you layer on top of that, inflation, the war in Ukraine creating a massive refugee crisis.
And the looming existential dread of climate change.
Which they mention is particularly heavy for younger generations, this zeitgeist of anxiety about the future of the planet.
So if you take all of that together, the picture is pretty bleak. It's a world on fire.
And if you are a leader or just a person trying to get things done, it feels impossible.
It does.
But, and here's the pivot in the text that really caught my attention. The authors argue that if you look closely at that fire, you see something else happening.
The flip side.
Right. The world didn't actually stop. They list these incredible examples of adaptation that happened almost overnight.
It's the resilience reflex. When the normal systems broke, people just built new ones.
They point to things like, delivery trucks suddenly filling the empty streets during lockdown.
Right, just to keep commerce moving.
Yeah, or restaurants. And this is one I remember vividly. Just turning parking lots into dining rooms.
It seems so normal now, doesn't it? But at the time, it was this radical reimagining of space.
Absolutely. And then you have the bigger things, like the rapid collaboration on vaccines.
And the massive overnight shift to remote work.
The thing everyone said was impossible for years.
They did. Companies said, we can't do it, the tech isn't there, the culture won't survive.
And then they had to do it. And they did it in a week.
So you have this duality. You have the chaos, but you also have this explosion of adaptation.
And that is the core argument of the book. The authors realized that this environment, this messy, scary, uncertain world, is not a barrier to leadership.
It's the condition for it.
Okay, let's dig into this, because this is the aha moment of their research, right? You said they have 40 years of data. How did they actually get to this conclusion?
Right, because it can sound a little bit like a platitude.
A bumper sticker, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Exactly. But the methodology here is really rigorous. For 4 decades, Kouzes and Posner have been asking people to write a case study. The prompt is called the Personal Best Leadership Experience.
Simple enough. Tell us about a time you were at your best.
Pretty much. Tell us about a time when you mobilized others to get extraordinary things done, and they've collected thousands and thousands of these stories.
All over the world.
Different cultures, different industries, you name it.
And when they analyzed them, what was the pattern? What did they find?
They found a constant, a pattern that held true 100% of the time.
100%. In social science, that's basically impossible. You always get outliers.
It's unheard of. But here it is. Every single case involved a significant challenge.
Every single one.
Every one. The authors are so explicit about this, people never reported their best leadership moments occurring during times of stability.
So no one ever wrote in and said, I was an incredible leader the year that nothing went wrong, the market was stable, and we hit our targets by doing exactly what we did last year.
Never. Not once.
That is really counterintuitive. We tend to think, if I just had more resources, or if the market wasn't so volatile, then I could really lead this team.
But the data says the exact opposite. The data says that easy, undemanding environments simply do not produce greatness.
Greatness is a response to difficulty.
It has to be. I mean, think about it. If the path is clear, you don't need a leader. You just need a manager to check the boxes. You need a leader when the path is blocked.
So what kinds of challenges are we talking about? Is it always saving the company from bankruptcy? Because not all of us are CEOs facing insolvency.
Not at all. And this is where the book really broadens the definition of leadership. The examples they cite are just incredibly diverse.
I noticed that. There was a story about a 16-year-old.
Yes, a teenager organizing an environmental campaign to get adolescents involved in local policy. That is absolutely a leadership challenge.
Or the story about the first female team to ascend a high peak.
That's a physical challenge, sure, but it's also a leadership challenge. Or a bureaucrat turning around a failing government program.
Or a community organizer feeding first responders during a local crisis.
The common denominator isn't the job title, or the salary, or the industry.
It's the obstacle.
Challenge is the crucible. That's the image I want you to hold on to. A crucible is a vessel that can withstand intense heat, used to melt and purify materials.
So the authors are arguing that challenge applies the heat and pressure that's necessary
Yeah.
to refine you into a leader.
Exactly. So if we look at the pervasive uncertainty of the world right now,
It's just one giant crucible.
and the authors are arguing we shouldn't view this chaos as a reason to hide. We should view it as an invitation.
Challenge is the opportunity for greatness.
Precisely.
Okay, I want to push back on this a little bit
Mm.
because it sounds really inspiring, but, practically speaking, plenty of people face challenges and they don't become great leaders.
You're absolutely right. They crumble.
Or they get cynical.
Ah.
Or they just keep their heads down and try to survive. Just because I'm in a crisis doesn't automatically mean I'm leading.
Yeah.
So what's the difference? If I'm listening to this and I'm facing a total mess at work, what is the actual mechanism for moving from surviving to leading?
This is where we get into what they call the evidence-based operating system.
An operating system. I like that. It implies a set of instructions, not just, a personality quirk you're born with.
That's exactly what it is. Over these 4 decades, Kouzes and Posner didn't just collect the stories, they dissected them. They looked at the behaviors.
They asked, what did that 16-year-old actually do? What did that mountaineer do?
And they distilled it all down to 5 things.
The 5 practices of exemplary leadership.
That's the one.
Now, we aren't going to do a super deep dive into every nuance of these today. That's what the rest of the book is for. But let's at least outline the framework. What are they?
Okay, so the 5 practices are model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart.
It sounds simple when you just list them like that.
Yeah.
Model the way, encourage the heart. Honestly, they sound a little like nice things to do.
Soft skills.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the trap. People hear encourage the heart and think it's soft. They think it's just about giving high fives.
But the authors back this up with hard data.
Immense amounts of it. They developed something called the Leadership Practices Inventory, or LPI.
This is the assessment tool.
Right. It's a 360-degree assessment where your peers, your direct reports, your managers, they all rate you on these specific behaviors. And the database now has over 5 million respondents.
5 million. Okay, so when they say encourage the heart works, they are not guessing.
No. They have statistical proof that things like engagement, productivity, and retention are directly related to how frequently a person engages in these 5 behaviors.
So it's a direct correlation. The more you do these things.
The better the results. It's not magic, it's math.
But here's the part that I found most surprising, and I think it's the most relevant for our listeners. When they ran this data, they look at demographics.
And this is the real game changer.
It really is.
The data shows that leadership success is not dependent on your demographic.
Yeah. What exactly?
Meaning it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your ethnicity is. It doesn't even matter what industry you're in or what your job title is.
Wait, so the behavior of a great leader in a software startup is the same as a great leader in a nonprofit.
The core behaviors are identical. The context changes, but the practice does not. Leadership is not a gene.
It's not a personality trait. You aren't born a leader.
And that is incredibly democratizing.
It is, but it's also a little intimidating, isn't it?
Yes.
Because if leadership isn't a gene, then you can't use I'm just not a born leader as an excuse anymore.
Exactly. It removes the alibi. The text calls leadership boundaryless. It's available to anyone who is willing to practice the behaviors.
Which leads us to a really important redefinition of who a leader actually is. I think a lot of people hearing the leadership challenge might think, okay, I'll send this to my boss. She needs to model the way more.
Right. Fix the person above me. But the introduction makes it so clear. This is a field guide for everyone.
For parents, for teachers, volunteers, individual contributors.
They actually define leadership in a specific way that removes the authority aspect entirely.
They do. What's the definition again?
It is. Leadership is how people go about mobilizing others to want to make extraordinary things happen.
Mobilizing others to want to make extraordinary things happen. That word want is doing a lot of heavy lifting there.
It is the crucial word. It distinguishes leadership from management. Management is about compliance. Do this because I pay you.
But do this because I'm the boss.
Leadership is about commitment. Do this because we believe in it.
So you can manage people with a title, but you can only lead them with a relationship.
That's the quote. Leadership is a relationship.
So if leadership is a relationship and it's about behaviors, not titles, that means you don't need permission to start.
You don't need a budget. You don't need approval from the C-suite. The source explicitly says you can start right now exactly where you are.
Give me an example. If I'm an individual contributor, I have no direct reports, I'm just sitting in a cubicle or a home office. How do I challenge the process?
You see a workflow that's broken or frustrating for your team. Instead of just complaining about it on Slack, you propose a small pilot program to fix it.
You say, hey, what if we try this differently for just 2 weeks?
That is leadership.
Okay, or encourage the heart.
You notice a colleague who is clearly burned out or struggling. You take 5 minutes to write them a genuine note about something specific they did well last week. You recognize them.
That is leadership. These are small acts.
They're small acts, but they build the relationship. And remember, the data says the frequency of these acts is what predicts success.
It's not about the one big speech you give once a year.
It's about what you do every Tuesday at 10 a.m.
And there's always a catch. It does require something from you. It's not effortless.
No, not at all.
The authors make a point that the first place you have to lead is, well, it's inside yourself.
Self-development is leadership development. You can't mobilize others if you don't know what you believe. You can't model the way if you don't have a code of values to model.
So it requires reflection, which, let's be honest, is hard work.
It is. It requires reflection, humility, and persistence. It's a practice. It's like playing an instrument.
You don't just pick up a violin and play a concerto.
You practice scales. These 5 practices are the scales.
And you have to practice them even when, or maybe especially when, the noise around you is deafening.
Especially then, because that's the crucible. That's when it counts. That's when people are looking for a signal in the noise.
So let's bring this all together. We started by looking at a world that feels pretty overwhelming, a world of pervasive uncertainty.
Pandemics, polarization, economic shifts, all of it.
And we acknowledge that it's scary. But we also discovered that if we look at the data, 40 years of it, we see that this exact environment is the raw material for greatness.
We learned that people are at their best when things are tough.
And we learned that they have a roadmap, the 5 practices, and that this roadmap is open to literally anyone who is willing to behave in a certain way.
You just need the willingness to act.
There's one final sentiment from the source that I think we have to mention. It's how they close the introduction, and honestly, it's surprisingly emotional for a book based on 5 million data points.
It is. You expect a summary of statistics, but instead they end with this.
Leadership is not an affair of the head. Leadership is an affair of the heart.
An affair of the heart.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it?
Yeah.
You can have the strategy and the metrics and the operating system.
Yeah.
But at the core of mobilizing others, especially through a crisis, is caring.
It's about giving a damn.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's about caring enough about your people or your cause or your community to guide them to places they've never been before.
You can't do that with just logic.
Logic keeps the ship afloat. Heart is what gets the crew to row into the storm.
So here's the question I want to leave you with today. We all have something in our lives right now that feels messy, a project that's stuck, a team that's struggling.
A community issue that feels too big to fix. The pervasive uncertainty in your own microcosm.
Exactly. So if we know that your personal best is waiting for you inside a challenge, should you stop waiting for that situation to calm down?
What if the chaos isn't a stop sign?
What if you looked at that messy, difficult, frustrating situation right in front of you, not as a headache, but as your personal invitation to be great?
That's the challenge.
That is the challenge. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time. Leadership is ultimately about creating a way for people to contribute to making something extraordinary happen.
Wow.
That's the opening volley from the source material we're covering today. And I have to be honest, when I first read that, my cynical side kicked in a little bit.
I can see why it does sound a bit utopian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sets this incredibly high bar right out of the gate.
It does. It feeds into that whole great man theory of history, that you're either born to lead or you're born to follow.
Yes. We tend to think leadership is this, lightning bolt of charisma. You either have or you don't. The person who just walks into a room and commands attention.
But the document we're breaking down today, Chapter 1 of the Leadership Challenge, it really takes a sledgehammer to that idea.
It really does. And what makes this book so different and why it's such a classic is that it isn't just based on, the author's opinions.
Or some retired CEO's memoir.
Right. It's based on a massive, massive data set.
And the scale is honestly surprising. The research started way back in 1983, and it's been going for decades.
We're talking about, what, over 5,000 surveys initially?
Yep. And then hundreds of in-depth interviews on top of that. But the key, and this is where it gets really interesting, was the question they asked.
It wasn't, what is leadership?
No, because that just gets you abstract textbook answers that don't really help anyone.
They asked for the personal best leadership experience.
Exactly. They asked people, think of a time when you were at your absolute best as a leader. What did you do?
And these weren't just Fortune 500 CEOs?
Not at all. They were community volunteers, middle managers, project leads, anyone, really.
And when you pull together thousands of those stories, a pattern starts to emerge.
A very clear pattern. And it turns out leadership isn't some personality type. It's an identifiable set of behaviors.
That's the core insight, isn't it? It's not a gene, it's an operating system.
A perfect way to put it. It's a set of 5 specific practices available to anyone, no matter what their title is.
So our mission today is to decode that operating system. We're going to walk through these 5 practices, look at the data, and most importantly, figure out how you can actually start using them.
Let's do it.
Okay, so let's unpack practice number 1, model the way. Now, on the surface, this sounds like that old cliche, lead by example.
It does, but the research suggests there's a crucial step that has to happen before you can set that example.
You can't just jump straight to the action.
Right. Before you can lead others, you have to clarify your own values. You have to find your own voice.
Because if you don't know what you stand for, you can't really model anything authentic.
Exactly. People can smell inauthenticity from a mile away. It's like wearing a suit that doesn't fit. Titles are granted, but respect is earned. And you earn it by aligning what you believe inside with what you do outside.
There was a really good case study for this in the text. Vince Brown. He was a deputy program manager in the military.
Vince is a great example because he was in a system that's all about rank. I mean, in the military, you have to follow orders.
But he realized that rank doesn't equal trust.
Right. He said, I set an example of what I wanted for my team. But it wasn't just about working hard. It was about specific behaviors.
He had that rule. He would never ask his team to do anything that he wouldn't do himself.
If they were pulling an all-nighter, he was right there with them. If it was grunt work, he was in the weeds too.
It sounds so simple, but think about how often that rule gets broken.
Oh, all the time. You stay late, I'm heading to dinner. Vince understood that kills your credibility. And the data shows why his way works. It's not just about morale.
There was a stat on this, right?
Yeah. When direct reports see their leader frequently modeling the way, there's a 28% increase in them recommending that leader.
Wow, a 28% jump. That's huge. That's the difference between just complying because you have to.
And being committed because you actually believe in the person. It's because they watch your feet, not your lips.
Okay, so step 1 is credibility, walking the talk. That gets you the foundation. Then you need to know where you're going. Which brings us to practice number 2. Inspire a shared vision.
This is the forward-looking piece. But here's the trap a lot of leaders fall into.
They think they have to be some kind of prophet.
Exactly. Like they need to go up a mountain, come down with a stone tablet and say, behold, my vision, follow me.
And everyone just looks at it and says, okay, what's in it for me?
Right. The text mentions Amy Matson-Drohan, who nailed this distinction. She said, you can't proselytize a vision that you don't full-heartedly believe.
Authenticity again. You can't fake the excitement.
You really can't. But her real insight was that vision isn't a monologue. It has to be a dialogue.
What do you mean by that? Because vision sounds like one person's idea.
Well, the idea might start with one person, but to get people to move, you have to enlist them. You have to listen. You have to understand what they care about.
Their aspirations, their goals.
Yes. And then you connect the dots between the big organizational goal and their personal drive. It's not, here's my dream. It's, here's how our work helps you achieve your dream.
So it turns, I have a plan, into, we have a purpose.
Precisely.
Okay, so we've modeled the behavior. We've painted a picture of the future. Now, the hard part, actually doing it. That brings us to practice number 3, challenge the process.
This is one of my favorites because it just flips the script on what a manager is supposed to do. The research shows that personal best leadership moments never happen when people are just maintaining the status quo.
Never. That's a strong word.
Never. In all the thousands of cases, greatness doesn't come from keeping things the same. Leaders are always looking for ways to innovate and improve.
But innovation can be a scary word. If I'm a middle manager, I might think, I don't have the authority to reinvent the wheel.
And that's where the small wins approach is so important. You don't need these giant, risky leaps. It's about generating small wins and learning from your mistakes.
The example of David Ojakian was really powerful here. He was with the Aid for Artsakh campaign during a massive humanitarian crisis.
Right. I mean, total chaos, a war zone. The fundraising goal was huge. It would have been so easy to just freeze up. The problem felt too big.
That paralysis of scale. So how did he apply this practice?
He refused to let the scale overwhelm them.
Hmm.
Instead of saying, we have to raise millions right now, he broke it down. He let local chapters tackle manageable, bite-sized goals.
So one chapter can say, okay, we can't solve the whole crisis, but we can fund this one shipment of aid.
Exactly. And when they did that, they got a small win. And that builds momentum, it builds confidence. And the source makes a great point here. Leaders are the best learners. When you challenge the process, you will mess up. The best leaders just see that as data.
It reframes risk. You're not betting the farm, you're just running experiments.
And you don't have to run them alone. Which brings us right to the fourth practice. Enable others to act.
This section had a statistic that just blew my mind. They analyzed the language in the stories, and the word we appeared 3 times more often than I.
That says everything, doesn't it? The myth of the lone warrior leader is. It's just a myth. You can't do extraordinary things by yourself.
But this feels like a paradox for some people. If I'm the leader, shouldn't I have the answers? If I give away power, don't I become less important?
That's the old way of thinking. The authors argue that hoarding power actually makes you weaker. The case study of Sushma Hope from the probiotic supplier in India was a perfect example.
Right, she realized that if she dictated every single move, she was the bottleneck.
Her team could only move as fast as she could. To really scale, she had to give power away. She had to give her team a voice. And that taps into this deep psychological need for self-determination.
When people feel trusted and capable, they perform better.
They skyrocket. It's a reciprocal loop. The more you trust your team with authority, the more they trust you. If you treat people like they're capable of great things, they'll usually prove you right.
Okay, so we're challenging the process, we're enabling the team. But projects get long, people get tired, burnout is real. Which leads to the 5th and final practice. Encourage the heart.
I'm glad we're getting to this one because this is the one that so-called serious business people often dismiss.
It sounds soft, right? Like, I pay them, that's their encouragement.
That's the attitude. But the data shows it's a huge strategic mistake. The climb is hard. People get exhausted. If you don't find ways to replenish their spirits, they quit, either by walking out the door or just mentally checking out.
And we're not just talking about a generic good job email. The text highlights Iakta Malik, a clinical research associate. Her approach was really personal.
Yeah, high-pressure world, clinical trials. She noticed her team was just grinding away, becoming disconnected, so she organized these This Is Your Life ceremonies.
Like the old TV show.
Kind of. She took the time to recognize the whole person. They celebrated personal milestones, hobbies, who people were outside of the lab.
And did that actually affect the work?
It made a huge business difference. It built a real community. And here's the key. Celebration reinforces values. When you cheer for someone, you're publicly saying this is what we value here.
So it's strategic reinforcement. You're showing the tribe what good looks like.
Absolutely. It builds the resilience you need for the tough times. You can't make a withdrawal from an emotional bank account you haven't made any deposits into.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so that's the operating system. Model the way, inspire a shared vision, challenge the process, enable others to act, and encourage the heart.
Those are the 5.
Now, I want to get to the so what question. We have pragmatic listeners. Does this stuff actually pay the bills? Is there hard proof?
The data here it's staggering. When they looked at employee engagement scores, the leader's behavior explained about 42% of the variance.
Wait, hold on. Break that down. You mean almost half of whether a person is engaged or not comes down to their leader's actions?
Yes. Not the salary, not the perks, the leader. But if that's not enough, look at the bottom line. Over a 5-year period, organizations with leaders who frequently use these 5 practices, they had net income growth nearly 18 times higher.
18 times, not 18%.
18 times, 1,800%. This isn't just nice to have, it's a massive competitive advantage.
That completely kills the argument that soft skills don't create hard numbers.
It obliterates it. Leadership isn't soft, it's the hard edge of business.
I want to zoom out for a second. The chapter also defines leadership as fundamentally a relationship.
This is my favorite part of the whole thing. It's not a position you hold. It's a relationship between those who aspire to lead and those who choose to follow.
And choose is the key word there.
It is. Talent can always walk. So if it's a relationship, what do people look for in that leader?
The authors have been running a survey on this for decades, right? The CL survey?
Yeah, since 1987. They ask a simple question. What qualities do you look for in a leader you would willingly follow?
And the answers changed over time.
You would think so, but they are shockingly consistent across cultures, across decades. 4 traits are always at the top. People want a leader who is honest, competent, inspiring, and forward-looking.
Honest, competent, inspiring, forward-looking. The big 4.
And here's where the authors do a little bit of beautiful, simple math. If you combine honest, competent, and inspiring, what does that create?
Someone I can trust. Someone who's credible.
It equals credibility. And that is the foundation. They call it the first law of leadership. If you don't believe the messenger, you won't believe the message.
That hits hard. You can have the best strategy in the world, but if people don't find you credible, none of it matters.
0. And how do people decide if you're credible? They watch your behavior. They look for the alignment between your words and your actions.
Which brings us full circle, right back to the beginning.
A perfect loop. Model the way is the behavioral definition of credibility.
And this leads to what they call the second law of leadership. I love this acronym. DWYSYWD.
DWYSYWD. Do what you say you will do.
It sounds so simple, almost childishly simple.
It does. But in the chaos of organizational life, it is the hardest thing to do consistently. It's so easy to make a small promise in a meeting, I'll look into that, and then the day just runs away from you.
And every time that happens, it's a little chip away at that foundation of credibility.
It's like a credit score. And if that score drops too low, these 5 practices become impossible. You can't inspire a vision if people think you're a hypocrite.
So if there's one thing to take away from this, it's that leadership isn't about being a rock star. It's about being consistent.
It's about consistency and connection. And the best part is you can start today. You don't need a promotion. You don't need anyone's permission.
As the chapter says, leadership is a choice you make, not a place you sit.
It puts all the power right back in your hands.
All right, we have unpacked the myth, the 5 practices, that insane 18x ROI stat, and the absolute core of credibility. Now, we want to leave you with something to actually do.
Right.
Since credibility is the currency and DWYSYWD is how you earn it, here's a challenge.
Yeah.
Look back at your last few days, your calendar, your emails, the conversations you had.
I'm mentally scanning mine right now.
What is one promise you made, even a small one that you haven't followed through on yet? I'll send you that link. I'll call you back. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
The little things that so easily slip through the cracks.
Find one of those broken links.
Yeah.
And go fix it today. If you want to prove you're worth following, start by doing what you said you would do.
A simple, powerful first step. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
If I asked you to close your eyes and picture a great leader, capital G, capital L, what's the first image that hits your brain? Be honest.
Oh, it's always the general on the hill, right? Or maybe the Steve Jobs figure on a stage, black turtleneck, telling everyone exactly where the future is.
Precisely. We're sort of conditioned to think leadership is an external sport. It's all about strategy, charisma, market analysis. It's about looking out.
But today, for this deep dive, we're looking at a stack of research that suggests that direction is, well, it's actually backwards.
How so?
We're looking at the Leadership Challenge, specifically Chapter 2, Clarify Values. And the data here is pretty stark. It says if you want to lead other people, you have to ignore them for a minute and look in the mirror first.
It's like the oxygen mask theory of management. You have to secure your own values before you can help anyone else.
That is a fantastic way to put it. The authors call this whole principle model the way.
Lead by example. Sounds easy enough.
It sounds so simple, but the research shows it's incredibly difficult because you can't model a behavior if you haven't really defined the belief behind it.
So the mission for us today is to unpack why finding your voice isn't just, fluffy self-help advice.
Right.
But that it's actually a hard-nosed driver of profit and team performance. And we've got some really counterintuitive stats on employee commitment that I think are going to surprise a lot of people.
Yeah, the data on shared values versus personal values. Honestly, it's the highlight of the research for me. It completely flips traditional HR thinking on its head.
Okay, let's get into it. The chapter opens with this concept that, well, I think anyone who's suffered through a bad corporate speech will recognize it instantly.
Yeah.
They talk about the suit of clothes analogy.
Right. They make the point that you cannot lead with someone else's words if you try to adopt a style that just isn't you.
Like trying to be the Wolf of Wall Street type when you're really a quiet, analytical thinker.
Exactly. It's like wearing a suit that's 3 sizes too big.
You don't look authoritative, you just look ridiculous.
And you feel hollow. The audience, they pick up on that dissonance immediately. We've evolved to detect inauthenticity. When a leader is reading a script that doesn't align with their internal voice, trust just evaporates.
There's a case study in the notes that illustrates this perfectly. The story of Alex Anwar.
Alex is the perfect example because he was in a situation where the pressure to fake it was just incredibly high.
So set the scene for us.
Okay, so Alex gets hired as a director for a new business unit at a medical equipment supplier. High stakes, but he walks in with 2 massive disadvantages.
Okay.
1, he's significantly younger than most of his direct reports, and 2, the team is toxic. I mean, they're siloed, they're resentful, and they are looking at this kid thinking, who are you to tell us what to do?
That is a classic trap. The insecurity would usually trigger a defense mechanism. The instinct is to come in hot, right? Assert dominance. I am the boss.
Exactly. But Alex, he flipped the script. He realized that trying to be the big boss would be wearing that ill-fitting suit. So he sent an email to the whole team.
And what did it say?
Well, he didn't introduce himself as the manager. He introduced himself as a fellow employee.
I have the text of that email here. He wrote, I am a fellow employee of the company charged with a difficult task. Wow, that's vulnerable.
It is. And then instead of listing his demands or, his resume, he listed his values. He told them what he expected of himself. Honesty, sincerity, fairness. He put his own scorecard on the table.
Now, the skeptic listening might be thinking, okay, that's nice, but did it work? Or did they just eat him alive?
Well, it didn't make him instantly popular. This isn't a movie, right?
Yeah,
But the source material really emphasizes that it made him predictable.
predictable is such an underrated leadership trait.
It's the absolute foundation of trust. Because he stated his values up front, the team stopped guessing. When he made a decision, even a really tough one, they knew why. One of his engineers actually said he put all the values into his own words and gave us a clear idea of the kind of person he was.
He wasn't trying to be the previous boss. He was just being Alex. The authors use this analogy of art students that I found really helpful here. When you go to art school, you start by copying the masters, right?
Yes. You copy a Rembrandt or a Picasso to learn the technique. And in leadership, we do the same thing. We mimic our mentors. We mimic the CEOs we admire. It's a necessary phase.
But you can't stay there.
No. If you only ever paint by numbers, you're just a technician. You're not an artist. To lead effectively, you have to eventually find your own brushstrokes. And the authors call this entering the darkness of the inner territory.
That sounds ominous. The darkness of the inner territory.
It represents the struggle. It's uncomfortable work. You have to dig through your own experiences, your beliefs to figure out what you actually stand for. But here is the payoff, and this is where the hard metrics come in.
Okay, lay the scat on us.
Leaders who are perceived by their teams as being clear about their own leadership philosophy. They are rated 128% higher in effectiveness than those who are unclear.
Wait, 128%. That's massive. We aren't talking a 10% bump here.
No, we're talking more than double the effectiveness. And it makes sense if you think about it. If you don't know who you are or where you're going, why should anyone follow you? Without that clarity, you're just a person taking a walk.
Okay, so step 1 is find your voice. I need to know my values. But most of us don't work in a vacuum, right? We work for organizations that have their own values plastered on the lobby wall. Mission statements, laminated cards, the whole 9 yards.
The corporate credo.
Exactly. So this brings us to what was, for me, the most surprising part of the research, the conflict, or I guess the relationship between my values and the company's values. If I were at a company, I assume I want company men. I want people who bleed the corporate colors.
That is the assumption. But the data says you're wrong.
Okay, walk us through this study. They looked at the degree of employee commitment based on value clarity.
Okay, so picture a simple 2x2 matrix. On the vertical axis, you have clarity of organizational values. On the horizontal, clarity of personal values.
Got it. So let's look at the bottom left quadrant. Low clarity on both.
These are the drifters. They don't know what they stand for, and they don't know what the company stands for. Their commitment score is the lowest, naturally, about a 4.9 on a 7-point scale.
Makes sense. Now let's look at the company man. High clarity on the organizational values, but low clarity on their personal values. They know the mission statement by heart, but they haven't done that inner territory work.
And this is the shocker. Their commitment score is 4.87.
Hold on. It's lower than the drifters.
Statistically, it's basically the same. But just think about the implications of that. You can spend millions on internal marketing, town halls, posters to make sure everyone knows the company way.
Yeah.
But if those people don't know their own values, it generates zero additional commitment.
That is a huge ROI problem for most HR departments.
It gets worse or better, depending on how you look at it. Look at the third quadrant. This is high clarity on personal values, but low clarity on organizational values.
So these are people who know who they are, but they might be a little fuzzy on the corporate slogan of the week.
Their commitment score jumps to 6.12.
Whoa. That is a dramatic leap.
It is the single highest jump on the entire chart. In fact, when you look at the fourth quadrant people who know both, the score is practically the same. The data proves that the primary driver of professional commitment is personal grounding.
So let me see if I can synthesize this. You're saying people don't commit to a company because they've been brainwashed by the culture.
Not at all.
They commit because they see a fit between their internal compass and the company's direction.
Precisely. The authors quote this perfectly. They say, the most talented people gravitate to organizations where they can look forward to going to work each day because their values work in that setting. You can't install commitment into an employee. You can only provide an environment where their existing values can thrive.
That completely changes the role of a leader. It's not about indoctrination.
It's about alignment.
It's about helping people see the connection. Here is what you care about. Here's what we do. Do you see how you can express your values through our work?
That's it.
But here's the danger, and I have to ask this. If I just encourage everyone to live their truth, don't I risk, well, anarchy? I mean, you can't have 1,000 people all rowing in different directions because their personal values tell them to.
That's a valid concern. And that leads us to the second half of this framework. We have to move from the I to the we. Authentic leadership starts with find your voice, but it has to mature into affirm shared values.
Because a company is a collective, a team.
Right. And we need to distinguish between two words that get used interchangeably but mean very, very different things. Values and vision.
Okay, break that down.
Vision is the where. We're going to the moon. We're going to double our revenue. That's the destination. Values are the how. How do we treat each other on the way to the moon? Do we step over bodies to get there? Or do we carry each other?
You need the shared values to survive the journey to the vision.
Exactly. When the pressure hits, the vision can feel really far away. The values are what keep the team from tearing itself apart in the trenches.
There's a story about a Dr. John Siegel in the notes that illustrates this perfectly. It's set in a hospital, which is, it's a pressure cooker by definition.
This is a great example of a meeting gone wrong. So Siegel is trying to do a restructuring. He gets all the stakeholders in a room, doctors, admins, residents, and the dam just breaks.
I can imagine. Everyone has a grievance.
Oh, it was toxic. People are shouting about lazy residents, broken pagers, low pay, bad cafeteria food. They were just venting. And Siegel realized the meeting was about to fail because they were fighting about details.
They had lost the plot.
So he did something really bold. He literally stopped the meeting. He raised his hand and he said, wait, I want to remind you of something. Our priority is to deliver excellent care for our patients and provide an excellent learning experience for residents.
He pulled the shared value ripcord.
He did. And the source says the energy in the room shifted instantly. It went from me versus you to us versus the problem. They stopped attacking each other and started asking, okay, how does fixing the pagers help us deliver better care?
It acts as a refocusing mechanism. When things get blurry or heated, the values are the true north.
And bringing it back to the bottom line, that refocusing pays off financially. This is the part that usually grabs the attention of the CFOs listening.
Show me the money.
The research compared companies with strong, adaptive, shared values cultures to those without. Over a 10-year period, the companies with strong shared values saw their stock prices grow 12 times faster.
12 times. That is not a margin of error.
And their net income profit performance was 750% higher.
That is just staggering. It suggests that soft skills like culture and values are actually the hardest currency in business.
Because speed comes from trust. If we share the same values, I don't have to second guess you. I don't have to micromanage you. We just move. Companies without shared values waste an enormous amount of energy on internal friction and politics.
I want to touch on one more story that really struck a chord with me. The story of Rob Field and the Black Arts Institution. This wasn't about profit. This was about survival.
This was a rescue mission. The institution was facing a total financial collapse. They were about to close the doors for good. Rob Field takes over as executive director, and everyone expects him to do the turnaround king thing.
Slash costs, fire people, launch a desperate marketing campaign, the standard operating procedure.
But he didn't do any of that. He went to the archives, he dug into the history of the founders, he looked for the original spark, the values that created the place in the first place.
He went backward to go forward.
He connected the community to their own identity. He spoke to them not about the debt, but about what the institution stood for. He basically said, this is who we are. Are we going to let this die?
He made it existential.
And the community responded. They had a massive crowdfunding explosion, and they saved the institution. He proved that shared values are this potent fuel source, especially in a crisis.
Okay, so we've established that this matters. But I want to get practical for the listener who's driving to work right now. If I'm a team leader, how do I actually do this? Do I, type up a list of integrity, respect, excellence, and tape it to the break room fridge?
Please don't. That is the quickest way to induce eye rolls from everyone.
So what's the alternative then?
The source material is very specific here. Forge unity. Don't force it. You cannot mandate buy-in. Unity is a byproduct of dialogue.
So it's a conversation, not a broadcast.
There's a tactic used by a manager named Michael Lynn in the book that I just love. He ran a tech support team, and he implemented what he called value quizzes.
That sounds like a test.
Yeah.
Question 1. What is our third value?
It wasn't that dry. It was more of a debrief. After a project wrapped up, or even just during a staff meeting, he would ask the team, okay, looking at how we handled that outage, how well did we uphold our values?
Oh, I see. So he made the values a tool for evaluation.
Exactly. It wasn't abstract anymore. It was, we say we value customer first, but we made that customer wait 20 minutes. Did we fail the value? It keeps the values alive and breathing.
Another recommendation, and this goes back to the whole finding your voice part, is writing a personal credo.
This is a heavy exercise.
Yeah.
The authors actually suggest writing a tribute to yourself.
A eulogy.
Essentially, yes. Imagine you're at the end of your career. How do you want to be remembered? Not what titles you held, but what principles guided you. Writing this down forces you to clarify that internal compass.
And imagine once you have that, you can do a similar exercise with your team, a team credo.
You can. But there's a trap here. The authors call it the paradox of inclusiveness.
Which
You
is?
do not want everyone to agree on everything.
That feels counterintuitive. I thought we wanted unity.
We want unity on the core. If you force agreement on every little detail, how we dress, how we work, how we speak, you kill diversity. You kill innovation. You end up with a cult, not a company.
So the goal is agree on the why and the how we treat each other, but disagree, even argue, about the strategy, the execution, the ideas.
Precisely. Strong, core, diverse application. That is the sweet spot of high-performing cultures.
This has been a really significant shift in perspective for me. We started this deep dive talking about the general on the hill, always looking outward. But the leadership challenge is telling us that the first step is actually looking inward.
It's a total inside-out process. To recap the journey, step 1, find your voice. You have to do the work in that darkness of the inner territory. If you don't know what you stand for, you're just acting a part.
Right.
Step 2, personal clarity drives commitment. Your team will work harder if they are clear on their own values and see a path to express them in their work. And step 3, affirm shared values. You build the community by connecting those personal values to a shared purpose, like Dr. Siegel or Rob Field did.
And the reason this all matters is credibility.
That is the bottom line. Leadership is a relationship. It's a relationship between those who aspire to lead and those who choose to follow. And you cannot build a relationship on a fake persona.
It's frightening, but it's also empowering. You don't need to go out and buy a new personality. You just need to be clear about the one you already have.
Well said.
Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with a challenge. It comes straight from the source material, and it ties back to that credo idea.
It's a classic mental exercise.
Imagine it's 5, 10, maybe 20 years from now. You're at a celebration of your career. Your team is there. Your colleagues are there. They're raising a glass to you. Here's the question. What are they saying?
And it's not. They increased Q3 profits by 4%.
No.
Mm.
What principles did they say you lived by? Did you treat people with respect, Were you honest when it was hard? If you can't answer what you want them to say, then you probably aren't leading the way you want to today.
That's the work. That is where it all starts.
Thanks for diving deep with us. Now go find your voice.
All right, I want to take you somewhere. Picture this. A manufacturing plant deep in the American Southwest. You can feel the heat coming off the asphalt.
Yeah.
It's noisy, smells like, industrial lubricant, and honestly, the place is a mess.
So not exactly the world-class facility they're hoping for.
Not even close. And that's the funny thing, right? The management team there was completely obsessed with this idea of being world-class.
The buzzword.
Totally. They had the binders, the mission statements, all the meetings about the meetings. But if you actually walked the floor, trash everywhere, grime on the equipment, it was all just words.
That is such a classic disconnect. We say we want excellence, but we walk right past the small problems every single day.
Exactly. So into this situation walks a new manager. His name is Steve Skark. He looks around and he just knows that another memo about housekeeping is going to do nothing.
That'll just go in the trash with everything else.
So what does he do? On his lunch break, he gets in his car, drives to a hardware store, and buys a 2-gallon plastic bucket.
A bucket. Okay, I'm intrigued. Where's this going?
He takes a marker, and right on the side of this bucket, he writes, "World-class plant."
Oh, I like this.
And then he just starts walking. He walks through the control room, sees a candy wrapper, picks it up, puts it in the bucket, goes down the hall, finds a soda can. In the bucket it goes.
And he's the new boss doing this.
He is the boss. And here's the absolute key to the whole thing. He doesn't say a single word. No yelling, no scolding, no big meeting to show off his bucket. He just fills it up, walks past all the supervisors, and dumps it in the trash can.
I have to jump in because that is such a powerful image. If I'm an employee there, I'm thinking one of two things. Has the new guy lost his mind? Or is this some kind of passive-aggressive test?
Oh, for sure. I would have thought he was having a breakdown. But he just kept doing it day after day. Every single time he left his office, he took the bucket.
And that silence is what makes it work, isn't it? If he nags, it's just about compliance. But because he just does it, it forces everyone else to look at what they're doing or what they're not doing.
And that is exactly what happened. First, the other managers started feeling awkward, watching their boss play janitor. So they start buying buckets.
Of course they do.
Then the operators on the floor start making it a game. Like, hey, how much trash did you get today? A few months later, the whole culture has shifted. People are cleaning their own machines. And Steve never, ever gave a lecture.
That story is perfect. It's the ideal way into what we're talking about today. We're doing a deep dive into Chapter 3, Set the Example. And Steve Skark's bucket is just. It's the physical form of that core idea.
Which is?
You have to live the shared values before you can ever hope to teach them.
It sounds so simple, but that really is the difference between just being a boss and actually being a leader.
Precisely. The authors call it modeling the way. And the whole argument is that we are, fundamentally mimics. We don't really listen to what leaders say. We watch what they do.
Like that old saying, people watch your feet, not your lips.
Exactly. Watch your feet, not your lips.
I like that. But let's be honest for a second. Most leaders I know, they think their feet and lips are in perfect sync. They believe they're trustworthy.
They do. But the data shows there's almost always what's called a say-do gap. And the research we have here, it's actually kind of terrifying.
Okay, lay it on me.
So they studied the link between a leader following through on their promises, that's the behavioral integrity piece, and how much their team trusts them. Now, I want you to guess. If a leader rarely follows through, what percentage of their direct reports do you think strongly trust them?
Ooh, rarely. That's bad. But, people need their jobs. They might be forgiving. I'll be optimistic. I'll say 40%.
You are way, way too optimistic. It's 12.
12%.
12.
Wow.
1, 2. If you don't do what you say you're going to do, trust. It evaporates. You basically don't exist as a leader.
Wow. Okay, so what about the other side? The leader who very frequently follows through.
That number jumps to 86%.
Whoa, that's a massive difference.
It's almost a binary switch. There's no real middle ground. It just proves that this isn't some soft skill. It's the actual mathematical foundation of leadership.
And it's not always about these big, grand promises, is it? It's not just, I promise we'll hit our targets. Sometimes it's about how you act when the building is, metaphorically on fire.
Yes. Crisis reveals character. That is the old saying, and it's true.
Yeah.
And the sources have this incredible story about a nurse named Imani Williams.
Yeah, this one really got me. So the scene is the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Imani's a veteran nurse, 20 years, but she's never seen anything like this. She's in the ICU.
Because high stress, high stakes, unbelievable fear.
Right, and there are no families allowed at all, and she overhears a doctor talking to another nurse. One of her patients needs to be intubated, put on a ventilator,
Okay.
and the team is rushing. The protocol is strict. No visitors. They just want to get the tube in and move on to the next emergency.
Which is understandable. I mean, in a crisis like that, efficiency often wins out over empathy. You just go into survival mode.
Exactly. But Imani, she stops them. She steps in and just asks, would the patient be okay for 5 more minutes? The doctor says yes. So in the middle of all that chaos, she pulls out her own cell phone. It's 6 a.m. She calls the patient's wife.
That's a bold move when the pressure is on to just go, go, go.
She puts the phone to the patient's ear so the wife can talk to her husband one last time before he's sedated. The patient is crying. He's thanking her. But here's the real leadership lesson. The impact wasn't just on that one patient.
No, it was on her staff. The whole team saw that.
Yes. Think about it. Imani could have given 100 speeches about patient-centered care, but by making that one phone call at 6 a.m. in the middle of a global pandemic,
She showed them. She showed them that compassion comes first, even when it's hard, even when it's inconvenient.
it's that feet not lips idea again. One action just completely drowns out 1,000 mission statements. So let's pivot from that to something every single leader deals with, whether you're in an ICU or an office, and that's time.
Ah, yes. Time and attention. They really are the currency of leadership. The sources make a really strong point here. How you spend your time is the single clearest signal of what you actually care about.
So if I say innovation is our top priority, but I spend 40 hours a week in budget meetings,
Then your top priority is the budget, not innovation. And believe me, your team sees it.
there's this story in the files. It's a perfect example, but it's also kind of painful. It's about a manager, and he was known as Mr. Customer Service. He'd championed this whole new installation program. He was all about the client.
Okay, so that's the say part of the equation. He's talking the talk.
Right. But then comes the test. He's literally about to leave for a week-long vacation with his family. Bags are packed. His family's on their way to the office to pick him up.
Oh no, this is the ultimate nightmare scenario for a leader.
It really is. The phone rings. It's a huge customer, and they are furious because that new installation program, the one he championed, is a complete disaster.
So he has a choice. A promise to his family or a promise to his customer.
Most people, and I'd probably include myself here, would hand it off. Find a deputy, say, call me if it's an absolute catastrophe, and get on the plane.
I mean, if I told my family, you guys go on ahead, I've got a work thing, I'm not sure I'd have a family to come back to. It's a massive ask.
It's huge. But he didn't go. He told his family to fly without him. He stayed behind. He got the team together, spent 2 full days fixing the problem, rebuilding the process, and making it right with the customer. Then he flew out to join his family.
That is a brutal choice. But think about the message that's sent.
Oh, it's crystal clear.
If he had left, the lesson would have been, customer service is important until it conflicts with my personal life. By staying, he proved that the value was real. It was worth a personal sacrifice.
And it doesn't always have to be some huge sacrifice. Sometimes it's just about being willing to do the grunt work, like the story of Tyrone O'Neill at the telecom company.
He wanted to improve customer retention.
Yeah, but he knew his team was just so tired of new initiatives, so instead of creating a task force, he just rolled up his sleeves.
Literally.
Literally, he started going to the call center, putting on a headset, and taking calls from angry customers. He did mystery shopping at his own stores on the weekends.
And that breaks down the whole hierarchy. The golden rule here is don't ask people to do something you're not willing to do yourself. If the boss is too important to answer the phone, then answering the phone isn't important.
Okay, we've hit actions, we've hit time. Now I want to get into something that feels a little more abstract, but the science on this is just wild. Language?
Oh, this is one of my favorite parts of the research. We tend to think of words as just labels, but the neuroscience is clear. Language actually frames our reality. It can even change your brain chemistry.
Okay, hang on. Changes brain chemistry. That sounds like something out of science fiction. Break that down for me.
It all comes down to how our brains handle threats. So when a leader uses hostile or controlling language words like subordinate, compliance, just do it, it triggers the amygdala.
That's the lizard brain, right? The
Uh-huh.
fight or flight center. Exactly, the threat detector. And when the amygdala fires up, it hijacks the brain's resources. It literally diverts blood flow away from the prefrontal cortex.
Which is where we do all our smart thinking.
That's your center for complex reasoning, creative problem solving, all of it.
So if I walk into a meeting and start barking orders, I am actually physically making my team dumber in that moment.
Functionally, yes, you're shutting down their logic centers. But the reverse is also true. When you use inclusive language, we, partners, associates, it signals safety. The prefrontal cortex stays online. Cognitive function actually goes up.
That makes so much sense. It's not just about being politically correct.
No, it's a performance strategy. If you want smart work, use smart words. And this idea extends to the questions you ask. We call it questions as searchlights.
Meaning, whatever I point the searchlight at is what people will focus on.
Precisely. What you ask about gets measured, and what gets measured gets done.
I love the example of Joshua Frydenberg. He took over this struggling sporting goods store, and he realized his staff was just droning on about technical specs. The fiberglass in the skis, the jacket stitching.
Boring the customers to tears.
Exactly. So he changed the question. He gathered the staff and had them close their eyes. He said, I want you to feel the cold air, hear the wind, smell the mountain powder.
He stopped asking about the product and started asking about the experience.
Right. He shifted them from technical thinking to emotional thinking. And once they started feeling it, they started selling the dream of the ski trip, not just the gear. And sales went up.
That's so powerful.
Yeah.
But changing the conversation like that, it takes confidence. And that brings us to what I think is probably the hardest part of this whole deep dive.
Seeking feedback.
The vulnerability paradox.
Yeah, and here's my problem with this. I get it in theory, but if I'm a leader and I go to my team and ask, so how am I doing? Doesn't that just make me look weak? Like, why is the boss asking us? Shouldn't he know?
That is the number one fear. We think asking for help signals incompetence. But the data shows the complete opposite. When a leader asks for feedback, their credibility rating goes up.
Really?
Yes, it signals confidence. Think about it. Only a secure leader is brave enough to ask for criticism. Weak leaders hide from it. Strong leaders invite it.
But you have to do it the right way, right? You can't just ask, am I doing a good job? Because everyone's just going to say, sure, boss, you're great.
Correct. Vague questions get you vague, useless answers. You have to be specific.
Oh.
Look at the story of Amy Tomlinson. She joined a startup, needed to build trust fast. She didn't ask, how was that meeting?
What did she ask?
She asked, what advice do you have for how I could have handled that meeting better?
What advice do you have? I love that phrasing. It flips the whole dynamic. It makes the employee the expert.
Exactly. It invites them to be a partner. And the source says it created this sidebar effect. Because she was open about not being perfect, it created a safe space for everyone else to talk about their own challenges without being afraid of blame.
Okay, so we're living the values, we're watching our words, we're asking for feedback. But sometimes things just go wrong.
Right. The plan completely falls apart. These are called critical incidents.
Unplanned moments.
Exactly. Unplanned, stressful moments where the script is useless. And these are, frankly, your biggest teaching opportunities.
Because everyone is watching your reaction.
Everyone.
There's a classic story about General Norman Schwarzkopf. This is way before Desert Storm, when he was a new division commander. First day on the job.
First impressions matter.
He's walking around, and he sees a group of soldiers out for a morning run. But it's a total mess. You've got this one captain, the super fit guy, way out in front. And then straggling way behind are all the slower soldiers, gasping for air, totally alone.
So a fragmented unit, the strongs are leaving the weak behind.
Schwarzkopf stops the captain. You'd think a general would yell about discipline or something. But he doesn't. He just asks him a question. He says, imagine you're a new recruit. You run until your lungs are burning. You fall behind. And you're left there. What kind of unit cohesion does that build?
Wow. That's a brilliant reframe. He turned a fitness test into a values test.
Exactly. He told the captain, get back there and run with them. He used a totally random moment on a Tuesday morning to teach the entire division that nobody gets left behind.
And that's the definition of a critical incident. He could have just kept walking. But he stopped the action to teach the value. We see it in the corporate world, too, like with Jennifer Tran.
Right, at the payments company. Less dramatic than the army, but maybe more relatable for most of us. She was basically in a war with a copy editor.
A grammar war.
Exactly. The editor was changing the user documentation. And technically, the editor's grammar was perfect, but Jennifer realized this is unreadable. A real user is going to be totally confused by this.
So she has a choice. Keep the peace and defer to the expert, or fight for the user experience.
And she fought. She stopped the whole process, risked a delay just to fix a sentence. She basically said, I don't care if it's grammatically perfect, I care if it's helpful.
And by doing that, in that one moment, she signaled to her entire team that user experience wasn't just a poster, it was a value worth fighting for.
Okay, we're getting near the end here. We've talked about personal behavior, language, crisis. But a leader can't be everywhere. You need systems that reinforce these values when you're not in the room.
And this is where we get into symbols, storytelling, and scoreboards. How do you make your values visible?
I love the scoreboard idea because it taps into that basic human need to, win the game. There's this great story about a car manufacturer in England. Huge quality problem, defects all over the place.
How do they tackle it?
They turned the car itself into a scoreboard. As a car was moving down the assembly line, if a worker spotted a defect, they didn't log it on a computer. They took a piece of chalk and put a big tick mark right on the car body.
So you'd have this car coming down the line, just covered in chalk, looking like it has the measles.
Exactly. And the manager just said, okay, team, let's make the ticks go away.
That's genius because it's so visual and immediate. Nobody wants to be the person working on the measles car.
It turned quality into a game, a visual challenge, and it worked. Productivity shot up, defects plummeted, all because of a piece of chalk.
Symbols work the same way. We need physical anchors for abstract ideas, like the story of the team that walked across the Golden Gate Bridge.
To symbolize crossing the chasm.
Right. They were moving from an old, comfortable business model to a scary new one. But by physically walking across that bridge together, it anchors the memory. So 6 months later, when things are tough, you can just say, remember the bridge, and everyone gets it.
It becomes a shared language.
Exactly.
So we've really covered a lot of ground, from buckets to brain chemistry to chalk marks on a car.
It's a lot, but it really all comes back to that one thing. You, the leader, are the signal generator.
Okay, let's make this really practical. If someone is listening to this right now and thinking, uh-oh, I've been sending some mixed signals, what's the first thing they should do tomorrow morning?
I would start with a values audit. It's a really simple but confronting exercise. Just open up your calendar from last week. Look at the blocks of time. Now imagine a total stranger looked at that calendar, someone who doesn't know you or your intentions. Based only on how you spent your time, what would they say your values are?
That is a scary question. They'd probably say my values are answering email and sitting on Zoom calls.
Right. If you say you value mentoring, but there's not a single one-on-one on your calendar, you have a say-do gap. You have to align your calendar with your stated values.
The text also has those 3 questions to ask yourself at the end of each day.
Yes. Number 1, what have I done today to demonstrate our shared values? 2, what have I done that might have accidentally shown a lack of commitment? And 3, did I set a good example today?
It sounds exhausting, though, realizing that you're never really off the clock as a role model.
It is.
Yeah.
But that's the price of admission for leadership. You are always on stage.
I want to leave everyone with one final thought to chew on. We kept coming back to that idea that people watch your feet, not your lips.
Right.
So try this thought experiment. Imagine your work life is a TV show, but the audio is muted. Your team can't hear your big speeches. They can't hear your promises. They can only see your actions. They see you picking up the bucket or making that 6 a.m. phone call or staying late to fix a customer problem. If the sound was off, what message would you be broadcasting?
That is the ultimate test, because in the end, the audio always fades. But the image of what you did, that remains.
Thanks for diving in with us. Go find a bucket, and we'll see you on the next deep dive. So, have you ever been in a meeting? Maybe you're leading it, right? Or you're just, I don't know, trying to get a project off the ground.
Yeah.
And you feel this just overwhelming, crushing pressure to predict the future.
Oh, absolutely.
Like everyone's looking at you for a crystal ball.
It's the classic burden of leadership, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have this idea that vision means you need to be some kind of prophet.
Yeah.
You're supposed to, like, stand on a mountaintop and wait for this lightning bolt of inspiration to just strike you with the perfect plan.
Exactly. And when that lightning bolt doesn't hit, which, let's be honest, it never does, you just feel like a complete fraud. You're sitting there thinking, I have no idea what's for lunch, let alone what's happening in 2035.
Hmm.
But today, we are going to debunk that myth completely. We are doing a deep dive into envisioning the future.
Right. And this is all based on Chapter 4 of that classic text, The Leadership Challenge. We've gone through the research, the case studies. And look, if there's just one thing I want you to take away from our sources today, it's this. Vision isn't magic.
Thank goodness.
It's not a solo act. And it is definitely not about having a crystal ball.
Which is just a massive relief. I think we can all exhale a little bit.
It really should be. The research shows that vision is actually a process. It's a discipline, really, that anyone can learn.
A skill.
A skill, just like coding or public speaking. And it starts at a pretty surprising place. But before we get there, we should probably define what we're actually talking about. When the authors say vision, they don't just mean a quarterly goal or some pithy mission statement you slap on a website.
No, the definition they use is really specific. They call it an ideal and unique image of the future. And I love that they focus on the word image.
It's a visual metaphor.
Yeah, you are literally seeing something that doesn't exist yet.
Think about an architect,
Yeah.
right? An architect draws a blueprint. They can see the building, the lobby, the elevators, how the light hits the windows before the ground is even broken. Leaders have to do that same thing. But the big question, the one that stumps everyone, is, where does that image actually come from?
Right. Because the movies tell us it comes from a sudden epiphany. You know, you wake up in the middle of the night sweating and shout, Eureka! I've got it!
And that's what we call the flash of insight myth. The sources are so clear on this. True visions, they rarely come from a sudden blast of intuition. Instead, they come from what the authors call inner whisperings.
Inner whisperings. I like that. It sounds a lot less stressful than prophecy.
It is. It's about recurring themes in your life, deep-seated beliefs. It's a process of self-exploration.
It sounds like something you can actually tune into. And to illustrate this, we have a really powerful story in the stack today about a woman named Deanne Grimm.
Diane's story is a perfect example of how this works in the real world, messiness and all. So Diane had retired from a long career in public education. She was working as a curriculum developer. Meaningful work, sure, but she didn't feel personally connected to it. It was a job. It wasn't a calling.
Yeah, she asked herself that scary question we all try to avoid. What is my dream? Not what my boss wants, not what the market wants, but what do I really want?
Exactly. And she realized she wanted to foster education, but in an innovative way. And she felt this really specific pull toward Nepal. She'd spent a summer there working with a man named Bhupendra Gimir, everyone called him Bhupi, who ran an organization called Volunteers Initiative Nepal, or VIN.
Okay, so she feels this pull, she reaches out to Bhupi, and this is where that lone genius myth just completely falls apart. Diane didn't just fly to Nepal and say, okay, everyone, move aside, here's my grand vision, follow me.
No, and if she had, it almost certainly would have failed.
Yeah.
She flew to this underdeveloped district, Okalunga. I mean, we're talking about a place with minimal infrastructure. Residents were mostly subsistence farmers.
Right.
And while she and Bhupi had this idea for preschools, the community was skeptical.
Of course, because context is everything. To us, a preschool sounds great. But to a family that's struggling just to farm enough food to eat, a preschool might just look like a place that takes their kids away from helping out.
Precisely. So Diane didn't impose. She listened. She just sort of existed in that space and paid attention. She realized that for the preschools to work, the whole community had to be involved. She saw that if they built these schools, the older siblings, who usually had to stay home to watch the little ones, could actually go to school themselves.
Oh, wow. And the women in the community could work outside the home or farm more effectively because they weren't tied down with childcare all day.
And suddenly the vision shifted. It wasn't just Diane's vision of education. It became a shared solution to the community's real daily struggles.
And the result?
They didn't just build one school. They built over 50 classrooms, serving 1,000 students annually.
That is incredible. And she said something really profound in the text, didn't she? Something like, I had no idea where this would take me when I started.
That's the key takeaway for me. She started with a value, a passion, and let the vision evolve by aligning it with what other people needed and hoped for. She didn't predict the future. She co-created it.
Okay, so that's the what. An ideal image that aligns your passion with the needs of others. But let's get into the how. If I'm a listener driving to work right now thinking, I'm not a retired educator going to Nepal, I'm just trying to lead my marketing team, how do I actually see the future?
It's a fair question. And fortunately, the source material offers a really practical framework here. It's a 3-step timeline. Reflect on the past, attend to the present, and prospect the future.
Let's reflect on the past first, because that sounds totally backward. If I want to see the future, shouldn't I be looking forward? Why am I staring into the rearview mirror?
You'd think so, wouldn't you?
Mm.
But the authors call this the Janus effect, named after the Roman god with 2 faces, one looking back, one looking forward. The idea is that your past is your traveling partner. You can't know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. Your past contains all the data points that form the trajectory of your future.
And we have a great example of this with Megan Davidson.
Yes, Megan is fascinating. Because her resume, on paper, it looked like a total mess. She'd been a 7th grade math teacher. She'd worked in nonprofits, tech startups, client management. It seemed completely scattered.
I feel like a lot of people can relate to that. You look at your own career path and think, what's the pattern here? I'm just jumping from thing to thing.
Exactly. But when she stopped to really look back, to do that Janus work, she found a common thread. In every single role, her fierce belief was in customer focus. Whether it was her students struggling with algebra or users struggling with software, she was just obsessed with improving their experience.
So that became her vision.
Right. Once she identified that theme from her past, she could project it into the future. She'd go to her team and say, this is who I am and this is where we are going. Absolute customer focus. It wasn't some corporate buzzword. It was her life story.
So looking back gives you the themes. Then comes step 2. Attend to the present.
This is the hardest one for modern leaders, I think, because of the busyness trap. We are so busy replying to emails, sitting in Zoom calls, putting out fires,
Right.
that we don't actually look at what's happening around us.
The source quotes the business thinker Gary Hamel here. He says, we're lost in a thicket of confusing, conflicting data. I love that word, thicket. It feels so accurate. You're just hacking through weeds every day, looking at your boots, not the horizon.
You are. And the advice here is to stop doing stuff for a moment. Create some white space. Look for the weak signals. What are people struggling with right now? What are the subtle trends in the data? If you're not paying attention to the present, you have 0 chance of guessing the future.
Which leads us to step 3, prospect the future. This is where we actually try to see what's coming.
But again, not by magic. It's about being your organization's futures department. Even if you're a team of 1, you have to ask, what happens after this current project ends? What's next?
There was a study you mentioned by Adam Grant that I found really interesting here about how to do this well. Because usually when people try to predict things, they get arrogant.
Oh, the forecasting tournament. Yes. Adam Grant found that the people who were best at predicting future events, way better than average, they didn't think like preachers or prosecutors.
Okay, so a preacher tries to convert you and a prosecutor tries to prove you wrong.
Exactly. The best forecasters thought like scientists. They were humble. They treated their ideas as hypotheses. They were willing to change their minds if the data changed. So prospecting the future isn't about being dogmatic or saying, I know for a fact this will happen. It's about being curious. It's about asking what if.
I love that distinction. Okay, so let's say we've done the work. We've looked back, we've looked around, we've looked ahead. We have a vision. Why is it so important to make it crystal clear? The source uses this amazing analogy about driving in the fog.
This is one of my favorite metaphors in the whole book. It's just so visceral. So imagine you're driving down the Pacific Coast Highway, south of San Francisco. Winding road, steep cliffs on one side, ocean on the other. And suddenly, a thick blanket of fog rolls in. How do you drive?
Oh, terrified. White knuckles on the steering wheel. I'm slowing way, way down. 5 miles an hour, maybe. I'd probably turn the radio off so I can see better.
Right.
I am definitely not trying to pass anyone.
Exactly. You're tense, you're slow, you're risk-averse. But then the fog lifts, sun comes out, you can see the road for miles ahead. How do you drive now?
Completely different. I relax, I speed up, turn the music back on. I'm enjoying the scenery.
That is what a clear vision does for a team. When a team is in the fog, when they don't know where they're going or why, they move slowly, they're hesitant, they create silos to protect themselves. But when the leader clears the fog and shows them the destination, they can move fast without risking safety.
We saw this with Kyle Harvey, right? The marketing specialist.
Right. Kyle was leading a video project. At first, he just let everyone do their thing. He thought he was being a cool boss, very hands-off. But the team was confused.
In the fog.
They were in the fog, work stalled. People were frustrated because they didn't know if they were making the right choices.
So he had to step up.
He did. He called a meeting and finally explained his artistic vision. He showed them the destination, and he said the fog lifted almost instantly. Once they knew the goal, they could use their creativity to get there fast.
It's a great reminder that being vague isn't being flexible. It's just being foggy.
Precisely. But here is where it gets really interesting and tricky. You can have the clearest vision in the world. You can see the mountaintop perfectly. But if it's just your vision,
Yeah.
it's useless.
Right, because you can't command commitment.
You can command obedience. I can pay you to do a job, but I cannot command you to care. A vision has to be shared. It's not about my vision. It has to become our vision.
Let's talk about Paul Johnson. He managed a vineyard. Now, that sounds like a romantic job, but it's his hard, physical work. He needed his team to be fully invested, not just clocking in and out.
He did. And instead of writing a mission statement in his office and laminating it on the break room wall, which is what most managers do, he gathered the team. They sat down and wrote a credo together. They debated it. They built it line by line.
And because they built it, they owned it.
They called it their constitution. Paul said it empowered them because when things got tough or uncertain, bad weather, a harvest issue, they didn't have to ask him what to do. They looked at the credo they wrote. They knew the vision because it came from them.
There is some hard science backing this up, too. The listeners need to hear about the radiologist study. This just blew my mind.
This is a surprising fact, for sure. So researchers looked at workers who analyzed medical images, CT scans, X-rays, looking for anomalies. It's tedious, high-focus work, staring at screens in dark rooms. They split them into two groups. Group A was told, look for objects of interest. If you find something, mark it. If not, discard it. Very transactional. Group B was told, look for cancerous tumor cells. They were given the meaning and the context of their work saving lives, essentially.
And here's the kicker. Group B was actually paid 10% less on average than Group A.
But their performance, significantly better, more accurate, found more anomalies, more productive. Why? Because the work had meaning. They weren't just finding objects. They were fighting cancer.
That is wild. Paid less but performed better because of purpose. It really shows that people are hungry for meaning.
And Deloitte backs this up with broader research. Organizations with a strong sense of purpose have higher engagement, better financial performance. It's not just a nice to have, it's a massive competitive advantage.
So if I'm a leader and I want that shared purpose, how do I find it? I can't just invent it. I can't just walk in and say we're saving the world if we're selling paper clips.
No, that's how you get cynicism.
Yeah.
You have to listen. And this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Deep listening.
We have the story of Jim Schwapak. He went from being a Navy submarine officer to a manager at a cloud-based software company.
Talk about a culture shock. On a submarine, you give an order, and people do it because, well, you're underwater in a metal tube. You need to survive. The hierarchy is rigid for a very good reason.
Right, it's command and control.
But in a software company, that doesn't fly. Jim realized his team had ideas, motivations, things he didn't understand. So he went on listening tours. He didn't sit in his office waiting for reports. He went to the cafeteria. He walked the hallways. He asked people, what do you care about? What makes you proud to work here?
The source material uses a really nice metaphor here. It says leaders need to hold up a mirror to their constituents.
That's a beautiful image. A leader shouldn't be a megaphone, shouting their own ideas at the crowd. They should be a mirror, reflecting back to the team what the team already desires. You're showing them how their personal needs and hopes are met by the common vision. You're saying, I heard you, and here is a future where we get what we both want.
So, to summarize what we've unpacked today, envisioning the future isn't about magic, it is a discipline.
It starts with looking back at your own past to find your themes, that Janus effect. It requires looking around at the present to spot the patterns in the thicket.
And it involves clearing the fog so your team can move fast.
But most importantly, it's not a solo act. You have to listen deeply to find a common purpose. Just like Diane and Nepal or the radiologists. When people see how their work matters to the bigger picture, they can achieve extraordinary things.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge from the source material. It's something you can do right now, maybe as soon as this deep dive ends.
This is a great exercise. Imagine it's 5 years from now. You're having coffee with someone, a friend, a mentor, and you are bragging about what you accomplished in your current role.
What would you say? What does the organization look like? How did you contribute? What are you most proud of?
Write that down. But then here's the harder question. If you asked your team that same question, would they describe the same picture?
Or are they still driving in the fog?
Exactly.
That is a big question to chew on. Are we all seeing the same movie, or are we watching different channels?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into envisioning the future. We'll see you next time.